Everything starts on a suffocatingly hot summer day that feels more like a prison sentence than a vacation. Behind the heavy barbed wire fences, something dark is already brewing under the sweltering sun. Flashback to when a mysterious boy leads young Ki-yoon to a secluded spot where no other kids ever venture. He promises her she has nothing to worry about, but she can't shake the feeling that they are crossing a line they can never uncross. Years later, the weight of her past makes school feel like a complete waste of time. Ki-yoon slumps over her desk in despair, feeling like her very existence serves no purpose and only gets in everyone's way. She wanders back through the quiet, desolate streets of her neighborhood, where the atmosphere feels as heavy as lead. Every gray building and empty alleyway only adds to the loneliness growing inside her heart. Ki-yoon finally reaches her front door and punches in the security code with a trembling hand. She hesitates for a split second, clearly dreading whatever reality awaits her on the other side of that door. The moment she steps inside, she freezes as the sounds of her parents' voices hit her like a physical blow. Her face instantly pales, because this is the absolute last place she wants to be right now. She walks into the living room to find her parents in the middle of an awkward situation. While her mom tries to force a laugh and act like everything is fine, the tension in the room is thick enough to cut with a knife. The mother's fake smile quickly fades into pure panic when she realizes her daughter returned much earlier than expected. The air in the room turns icy as they stare at each other in uncomfortable silence. Her father immediately starts grumbling that she should have stayed away longer to avoid the family drama. Ki-yoon stands there looking small and defeated, while her mother desperately makes up excuses about shortened school classes. Realizing the situation is too volatile to handle, her mom quickly dismisses her and tells her to hide away in her room. Ki-yoon just nods and retreats into the shadows, feeling like a total stranger in her own home. The mother's heart skips a beat when she hears a noise coming from the back of the house. She panics and tries to act natural while hiding the obvious tension before going to check on the source. The mom bursts into the bedroom to check on her other daughter and immediately gets exasperated that the girl hasn't even bothered to change out of her school uniform yet. The daughter shoots a cold glare back at her mother without saying a word. She is completely drained from the long day and clearly isn't in the mood for another lecture. Suddenly, Ki-yoon walks into the room looking like a ghost of her former self. The girl at the desk immediately starts grumbling about how annoying this living situation is becoming. The tension in the small room reaches a breaking point as the daughter kicks back her chair in frustration. She can't stand the sight of Ki-yoon lingering around her personal space for another second. Without a single word of greeting, the daughter storms toward the exit. She purposefully bumps into Ki-yoon to let her know exactly how unwelcome she is in this house. Ki-yoon takes the hit silently, while the daughter marches out with a massive attitude. It is becoming very clear that life in this household is going to be a living nightmare for our protagonist. The daughter screams at her mom to finally do something about their unwanted house guest. She makes it perfectly clear that she hates sharing her life with someone she considers a total burden. Her mother tries to talk sense into her by reminding her that Ki-yoon has nowhere else to go because the other relatives won't take her. The reality of their cramped living situation only adds more fuel to the fire of their argument. Ki-yoon grips the doorknob so hard her knuckles turn white while listening to them fight over her fate. She realizes with a heavy heart that even the people supposed to help her are starting to give up. Ki-yoon stands frozen in her room while the adults outside shout that they shouldn't have to look after her anymore. It is a soul-crushing moment for our girl to realize she is considered nothing but a nuisance by her own family. Her heart shatters as the weight of those cruel words finally sinks in, never imagining the people she trusted would turn on her so heartlessly the moment her back was turned. She tries to compose herself and face the music, knowing she can't hide in this room forever after hearing how her family really feels about her. Suddenly, the door flies open and she comes face to face with her aunt, who looks startled to see her standing right there. The air is thick with tension as both of them wonder exactly how much Ki-yoon heard of that nasty argument. Our protagonist quickly tries to act natural and insists that she is perfectly okay despite the drama unfolding. She is putting up a massive front just to escape the suffocating awkwardness of the situation. She forces a shaky smile and expresses her gratitude to her aunt for taking care of her until now. It is incredibly painful to watch her be so polite to someone who just admitted to wanting her gone. Her aunt hands over a shopping bag filled with belongings, almost as if she was already prepared for this exit. This subtle move makes it clear that the adults were serious about their plan to push her away. Then comes the final blow when her aunt suggests she should go sleep over at a friend's house for the night. They are literally looking for any excuse to get her out of the house as soon as possible. She desperately struggles to keep her emotions from boiling over, feeling like an unwanted stranger cast aside by the very people who were supposed to protect her. She reaches out to take the bag and accepts the offer to leave, realizing there is no place for her here tonight. With her heart in pieces, she prepares to walk out into the unknown and leave this toxic environment behind. Ki-yoon stares blankly as the reality of her situation finally starts to sink in. She is completely stunned by the realization that she truly has nowhere left to go and no one to turn to. She clutches the bag tightly, hesitant to see what is actually inside this unexpected offer. Her heart races as she prepares herself to face the truth hidden within these personal items. As she peers inside, she discovers a collection of necessities that make her stomach churn with unease. Seeing things like a toothbrush and condoms makes the dark implications of her current path painfully clear. Our girl stands there frozen, feeling the weight of the bag becoming a physical burden on her soul. She cannot believe her life has spiraled to the point where this is her only option left. Ki-yoon wanders out into the torrential downpour, letting the cold rain wash over her as she walks aimlessly along the fence. She feels completely isolated from the rest of the world while the storm rages on around her. She recalls hearing rumors about people jumping from this very spot and finds herself judging the distance to the ground. In her dark state of mind, the height doesn't even seem that intimidating anymore. She climbs to the top of the massive overpass, standing alone against the gray sky while the highway stretches out below. The world looks so small from up here, and the silence of the heights feels almost welcoming. Ki-yoon looks down at the world she might leave behind, feeling a strange mix of fear and heavy exhaustion. Suddenly, she notices something peculiar hidden near the edge that breaks her out of her dark thoughts. She discovers another mysterious bunker hatch tucked away in this isolated location, adding a whole new layer of mystery to the secrets hidden within this town. She edges closer to the brink, teetering on the line between safety and a dangerous fall, while vibrating with the tension of a choice that will change everything forever. Ki-yoon realizes she cannot survive out in the freezing rain and decides to seek shelter. She finds a heavy hatch leading underground and hopes this bunker will be her salvation from the storm. She slowly climbs down the ladder into the pitch-black darkness below. A voice from the shadows reaches out to her, begging her to stay and keep them company in this lonely place. Our girl finds herself at the bunker entrance with another survivor who feels just as lost as she does. Looking out at the world together, they realize they no longer have a place in it, and this hideout is their only refuge. The bunker feels like a tomb that has been cut off from the sun for ages. Ki-yoon cautiously explores the debris-filled corridors, while the silence of the underground starts to weigh heavy on her mind. Exhaustion and terror finally start to take their toll as she navigates the ruins with only her phone light to keep the shadows at bay, making her wonder if she made a huge mistake by coming down here. The further she goes, the more she realizes this place is a total dump that hasn't seen a cleaning crew in decades. It feels exactly like a scene out of a horror movie, and she half expects a ghost to jump out at any second. Finding a functioning bathroom feels like winning the lottery in this nightmare. Ki-yoon wastes no time scrubbing the filth out of her clothes, so she can at least feel a little bit human again. She eventually finds a living area and slumps onto a dusty couch with a heavy heart. The terrifying thought that she might be stuck living in this hole forever starts to sink in. The adrenaline finally wears off and leaves her completely drained of energy. She collapses onto the cushions and lets the darkness of the room swallow her whole as she tries to sleep. Ki-yoon stares at her lifeless phone, feeling the crushing weight of isolation. She closes her eyes and prays that when she wakes up, this whole ordeal will turn out to be nothing more than a bad dream. Something breaks Ki-yoon out of her daze as she lies in the shadows. She suddenly senses that something in her environment has shifted since she closed her eyes. She bolts upright in a panic when she notices a stream of light pouring into her hiding spot. The secret hatch she thought was secure is standing wide open. Her heart drops as she stares up at the patch of blue sky visible through the entrance. This opening should be sealed tight, but someone has clearly messed with it. Panic starts to set in as she realizes her hiding spot isn't a secret anymore. Her mind races, wondering how anyone could have possibly tracked her down to this remote location. Ki-yoon sits frozen on the couch, listening to her own frantic heartbeat echoing in the quiet room. She desperately tries to remember if she was the one who left it open by mistake. Clutching her phone as her only weapon, she cautiously stands up to investigate the breach. She knows she can't stay hidden down here if the exit is compromised. The blinding glare from the outside world forces her to wince as she moves toward the light. After living in the dim basement, the sudden brightness is physically painful. She slowly opens her eyes, trying to adjust her vision to the overwhelming surroundings. Every nerve in her body is on edge as she prepares to face whatever is waiting for her outside. Ki-yoon steps out into the massive concrete structure and immediately freezes in her tracks. A dark silhouette stands in the distance, confirming her worst fears that she is no longer alone. She stands there paralyzed, realizing her secret sanctuary is compromised, and she has nowhere left to hide from the stranger waiting for her. He stands alone in the silence of the underground tunnel, the weight of the situation finally catching up to him. With his face hidden in the shadows and his clothes stained with blood, he looks more like a monster than a survivor. Ki-yoon panics and sprints up the stairs, her screams echoing through the metallic chamber. He doesn't waste a second and chases after her, his footsteps thundering against the floor. She pushes herself to the limit, her bare feet clattering against the cold metal steps. She finally reaches the top and desperately reaches for the hatch that leads to freedom. But before she can turn the wheel, a blood-stained hand reaches out and grabs it first. Jin catches up to her and exerts all his strength to force the heavy hatch open. Ki-yoon freezes in place, staring at him with a mix of terror and confusion. She can't believe the person standing in front of her is the same boy she thought she knew. He looms over her, his presence suffocating as he holds the exit open. In that moment, a suppressed memory begins to surface in her mind. She remembers the warnings from her childhood to never go near him. Back then, everyone at school made it clear that he was someone to be hated and avoided. And the reason behind that collective fear was something far more sinister than she realized. Terrified by what she just experienced at the bunker, she runs away into the darkness as fast as her legs can carry her. She realizes that she isn't actually running from the building itself, but from the boy she saw inside. She can't get the image of the battered and bloodied Won-hyuk out of her head. Back at school, the students are miserable as the heavy monsoon rain continues to pour outside. The girls look out the window and comment on how much more ominous the landscape looks in this weather. Their attention is drawn to the massive military blast wall that looms over the neighborhood. They mention that the road has been closed off because the old structure is finally scheduled for demolition. They wonder just how tall the wall actually is, and if the process of tearing it down will be dangerous. While the others gossip, she tries to keep to herself by burying her head in her arms at her desk. One of her classmates turns around and gets a sudden shock when she notices her sitting right there. Suddenly, she is hit by a wave of intense physical pain that makes her grip the edge of her desk. She begins to tremble and groan in agony, making the girls around her feel extremely uncomfortable. The girl in front of her stands up and looks down at her with a face full of irritation and disgust. The bully snaps at her, calling her a creep for just standing there and being scary as hell. The group begins to mock her, laughing about her zero presence and calling her a gloomy ghost. She checks her phone, while her classmates tell her to just ignore the girl's drama. They dismiss her behavior as nothing more than a desperate cry for attention. The stress of the situation finally hits her, making her stomach churn with anxiety. She gazes out the window at the rain, feeling like she needs to get away from this place. Living in a border town means being surrounded by ugly bunkers and crumbling military facilities. These decaying structures have become a total eyesore that the residents absolutely despise. Because of the public pressure, the authorities finally begin tearing down the massive blast wall. Ki-yoon is lost in a daze, her mind racing as she tries to process the weight of what's happening. Ki-yoon finally tracks down Won-hyuk in the dark, but he looks like he's lived through a nightmare, covered in blood and desperately gripping the valve. He's clearly at his breaking point, battered and haunted to the point where he doesn't even notice Ki-yoon is standing right in front of him. His strength finally fails, and his bloody hand slips right off the iron handle. Ki-yoon can only watch in horror, her heart sinking as she realizes just how much he's been suffering. Back in middle school, Won-hyuk was a constant target for the bullies, and all Ki-yoon could do was watch from the sidelines. She couldn't help but feel a strange connection to him, sensing that there was a deep pain hidden behind his silence. He spent his days doing chores and keeping his head down, doing whatever he could to avoid being noticed by his tormentors. When she gets too close, he glares at her with hollow eyes and tells her to get lost before she gets involved in his mess. He's completely shut himself off from the world, determined to let nobody past the walls he's built around himself. Leaving early without permission is just another day for him. This kid is basically a ghost in his own school. The teacher is absolutely chewing him out for forgetting his supplies again. Man, this guy is a total jerk for not seeing that something is clearly wrong. He walked into class in just his socks because he forgot his shoes. The level of neglect this kid faces is just heartbreaking. And here is the kicker. Everyone calls him the murderer's son, and that label follows him everywhere like a curse. The dark shadow of his father's crimes follows him everywhere, ensuring that no one will ever see him as anything but a monster's child. Ju Won-hyuk has become the most hated kid in school, and the rumors about him have spread so fast that he's now a complete social outcast that everyone avoids like the plague. Ki-yoon watches him through the door while he is slumped over his desk. He is always alone, and it is starting to get to her. He spends his time sleeping at his desk because he has completely given up on everything, looking incredibly lonely in the empty classroom. She remembers seeing him sitting alone on the stairs before. This boy is a master of isolation. Ki-yoon keeps seeing him in these lonely spots, and it really starts to weigh on her heart. She sees him through the door and realizes he has absolutely nobody in his corner. Man, this kid life is just straight up depressing to watch. The school hallway is bright, but the atmosphere feels heavy. Something is about to happen, and the tension is rising. Ki-yoon is walking down the hall when she notices something is off. Her instincts are kicking in. She stops for a second to tie her shoelaces. Even in a hurry, she has to make sure she does not trip. She pulls the laces tight and gets ready to move. This girl is determined to find out what is going on. The school is empty and quiet, but Ki-yoon is still lingering around long after class is over. She is just standing in the middle of the hallway like she is looking for something important. Or maybe she is just looking for him one more time. She looks up suddenly and catches a glimpse of something. Her eyes go wide with surprise. She slowly walks toward the classroom door. You can feel the suspense building with every step she takes. The door is cracked open just a bit. Why would a classroom door be open this late at night? She wonders if there is actually someone still hiding in there. She is being super cautious right now. Ki-yoon peeks through the gap to see if anyone is inside. Her heart must be racing. She sees something that makes her stop in her tracks. What could possibly be in there? She carefully steps into the room, trying to keep her presence a secret. She takes a tentative step into the room. She is committed now, and there is no turning back. She finally reaches for the broom, suspecting that something is hidden right behind it. As she pulls the broom away, she senses a presence lurking in the shadows. Her eyes go wide when she realizes there is someone hiding right in front of her. She reaches for the broom, and suddenly everything goes sideways in an instant. A shadow moves in the corner, and Ki-yoon realizes way too late that she is not alone. The tension is through the roof right now, and she is in trouble. Out of nowhere, he lunges at her, and they both go crashing to the floor together. It is total chaos as desks get knocked over, and she barely has any time to react. This was definitely not what she expected to find in here. She is pinned down, and her mind is spinning. Everything happened way too fast for her to process. Won-hyuk is right in her face, and he looks absolutely exhausted and pained. He is breathing heavy and clutching his side like he is in serious trouble. Ki-yoon is frozen in shock at how bad he actually looks up close. She sets her fear aside and immediately asks if he is all right, wondering why he was hiding in a place like this. Won-hyuk looks like he is on the verge of passing out. His body is clearly at its limit. She tries to stand up so she can run to the nurse office for help, but before she can leave, he suddenly reaches out and grabs her to stop her. The sudden force startles her, and she lets out a small yelp of surprise. He suddenly collapses to the floor, right in front of her. She is horrified to see that his body is completely drenched in blood. Ki-yoon falls to her knees in shock as she realizes how badly he is actually hurt. The truth is revealed, and he is literally covered in blood. It is much worse than she thought. Seeing him like this reminds her of their time back in elementary school, when he was always alone. He suddenly pulls her into a tight grip, and she is stunned by the desperate strength he still has left. She tries to figure out how to shake him off, so she can go find a teacher for help. The two of them sink to the ground together, as he continues to lean on her for support. Ki-yoon looks closely at the boy she is trying to protect and sees the exhaustion in his eyes. She can tell just how much he has been carrying on his own all this time. Seeing Ju Won-hyuk's back like this brings back a flood of memories of him being isolated from everyone else. Whether he was at his desk or outside, he always looked so lonely and far away. She realizes she can't just stand by and watch him suffer in silence anymore. She slowly reaches out her hand to finally bridge the gap between them. Our girl goes all in and pulls him into a warm, tight hug. She gently pats his back to let him know that he doesn't have to face everything by himself. The quiet classroom feels like a completely different world while they hold onto each other. Every bit of noise fades away as the heavy tension finally starts to break. She keeps patting his shoulder with a steady, soothing rhythm. It is a small gesture, but she hopes it is enough to give him some peace. Ki-yoon looks at him and wonders if this simple hug is actually helping him feel any better. She is desperate to take some of that crushing weight off his shoulders. Won-hyuk finally stops fighting his emotions and lets his head fall onto her shoulder. He is completely exhausted from being strong for so long and just needs someone to lean on. She closes her eyes and breathes a sigh of relief that she reached him in time. The thought of what could have happened if he stayed in that dark place is absolutely terrifying. Just as he starts to relax, he suddenly freezes up for a second. The reality of the situation hits him, and he seems stunned by such genuine kindness. Ki-yoon realizes that without her intervention, Won-hyuk would have been left all alone in that terrifying locker forever. She holds him tight, knowing she just saved him from a lifetime of trauma. Looking at him now, our girl starts reflecting on her own past and how she ended up where she is. This moment of connection triggers some pretty heavy memories for her. She doesn't let go, offering him the kind of warmth and support she knows he desperately needs right now. It is a small gesture, but it means everything to a kid who felt forgotten by the world. The silence between them says it all as she continues to comfort him. She is fully committed to being the person who stays when everyone else leaves. Seeing the bandage on his neck makes her realize just how much he has been through. She leans in, wanting to absorb some of his pain so he doesn't have to carry it alone. She takes us back to when she was only 10 years old and lost both of her parents in a tragic car accident. With nowhere else to go, She moved in with her aunt to start a completely new life. Everything changed when she transferred into the same class as her cousin Jaiwon. She was just trying to blend in and find some sense of normalcy after losing her whole world. Even with family nearby, she feels like a total stranger in this new neighborhood. Every step feels heavy as she tries to navigate her grief in a world that doesn't feel like home anymore. Jaiwon is a social butterfly who is always surrounded by a close-knit circle of friends. They eventually welcome our girl into the group, making everyone believe she's finally starting to heal and fit in. However, the truth was that she was still trapped in a very dark place internally. While the other girls were laughing and moving forward, Ki-yoon felt like she was stuck in a world of shadows. Our little Ki-yoon is completely withdrawn, spending her days trapped in her own dark thoughts while ignoring the world around her. Even with her family photos nearby, she feels like she is living in a totally different reality. Out of nowhere, a blood-curdling scream shatters the silence and jolts her right out of her misery. She can't believe her ears as the terrifying sound echoes through the room from somewhere just outside. Ki-yoon is left stunned and trembling as the sound echoes through her quiet room. Something big is happening outside, and she knows she has to investigate. She rushes over to the glass, convinced that a woman is in serious trouble nearby. Her heart pounds against her ribs as she tries to peer through the darkness of the alley. She pauses for a second, her eyes searching the shadows for the source of the noise. What she sees down there is definitely not what she was expecting to find. Instead of a crisis, she spots a young boy sitting all by himself on the back stairs. He looks incredibly small and lonely as he huddles in the corner of the building. Ki-yoon starts questioning everything about this mysterious kid, wondering if he is her age and why he is sitting out in the cold. She finds herself completely mesmerized by his presence in the alleyway. She finds herself drawn to the window, unable to shake the strange feeling that she needs to keep an eye on him. From that night on, watching the boy sitting on the stairs next door becomes a regular part of her daily routine. Just seeing him out there, every day, actually, makes her feel a little less lonely in her own room. While lounging around on her bed, this girl stays glued to her flip phone like she's digging for some serious tea. She starts mentioning a specific name that catches Ki-yoon's attention immediately. Ki-yoon stops in her tracks to ask about a boy named Ju Won-hyuk. Her friend casually confirms that he is currently a student over in Class 1. The girl doesn't even look up from her screen while she prepares to drop a massive truth bomb. She clearly has all the local gossip right at her fingertips and is ready to spill it all. Everything changes when she reveals the dark secret that Won-hyuk is actually the son of a murderer. Ki-yoon stands frozen as she tries to process this terrifying information about her new neighbor. The weight of the revelation hits Ki-yoon hard as she starts to realize the gravity of the situation. Cold sweat beads on her face while she listens to the grim backstory of the boy next door. Even though the crime was a massive case elsewhere, the news traveled fast and everyone in town found out about the bloody arrest. The disturbing image of a man in handcuffs became the talk of the entire neighborhood instantly. The gossip gets even more personal as the girl brings up what happened to Won-hyuk's mother. Ki-yoon can't help but feel a sense of dread as the story shifts to the rest of the broken family. Word on the street is that the mother witnessed the entire gruesome scene with her own eyes and suffered a total mental breakdown. The details of the blood-stained tragedy make the situation seem even more hopeless and haunting. Ki-yoon is shaken to her core by the discovery of her neighbor's dark past, wondering how she's even supposed to act around him now. A final warning to stay far away and never go near him echoes through the empty hallway, which feels heavier than ever now that the building's secrets are starting to surface. The local kids are absolutely ruthless, spending their free time tagging Ju Won-hyuk's gate with nasty graffiti. It turns out that pretty much everyone at school has a deep-seated hatred for this guy and wants to make his life miserable. The bullies suddenly scatter like cockroaches when they realize the owner is about to step outside. Ki-yoon watches in confusion as they panic and ditch their markers to avoid getting caught red-handed. She stands there stunned, trying to wrap her head around the fact that her classmates are this dedicated to ruining someone's life. One of the boys even has the nerve to complain about the marker stains on his hands while he runs away. Ki-yoon realizes she is standing directly in front of Ju Won-hyuk's house and begins to dread whatever malicious mess the other kids actually left behind on his property. The local kids take their cruelty to a dark new level by branding the boy a murderer's son and threatening anyone who even dares to make eye contact with him. Ki-yoon is completely frozen as she reads the hateful words and realizes the heavy burden this boy carries every single day. The sheer cruelty of her peers finally starts to sink in, leaving her totally speechless. Ju Won-hyuk steps out of his home and immediately gets to work scrubbing the fresh ink off his gate with a rag. Ki-yoon flinches in shame as she watches him silently clean up the mess left by his tormentors. The empty classroom sits in total silence under the bright morning sun. This is where it all feels normal before everything goes completely sideways. Ki-yoon reaches out to touch his shoulder, but the cold tension in the air makes her realize that the boy she once knew is gone. She stays close to him and tries to find a spark of his old self, but the suffocating silence between them is deafening. His shirt is covered in dark stains that look suspiciously like blood. He is clenching his fists, and something is clearly very wrong with him. Won-hyuk stands his ground on the stairs and refuses to let her pass, effectively turning this concrete bunker into her personal prison. Lee Ki-yoon stares up at him with wide eyes and total disbelief. Her brain is trying to process why her friend is acting like a total stranger. She remembers a time when they were just kids leaning on each other for support. That warmth feels like a lifetime ago compared to this cold basement. Her phone slips from her hand and clatters against the metal stairs. The sound echoes through the empty room like a gunshot, and she is too shocked to even reach for it. Everything happens in a blur as someone loses their footing on the steep steps. Metal clangs against metal, and the panic in the air is thick enough to choke on. The situation is spiraling out of control faster than she can even scream for help. Won-hyuk looks down at her with a face full of bruises and exhaustion. He repeats his warning and tells her it is too dangerous to leave, so she needs to go back down. Her bare feet hesitate on the cold metal step as she considers her next move. One wrong step, and she might never get out of this place. Lee Ki-yoon slowly turns away from the exit and walks back into the shadows. She realizes she cannot win this fight with force alone. She stops and demands to know why she is being kept a prisoner. She wants to know why he is so obsessed with keeping her from the outside world. She listens closely for any sound from above, but the bunker remains deathly quiet. The only thing she can hear is her own heartbeat racing in her ears. Won-hyuk grips a blood-stained knife behind his back as the horrifying truth begins to surface. Ki-yoon has no idea she is being kept safe by a total monster. He steps forward, and his sneakers make a heavy thud against the concrete floor. He is closing the distance between them, and she feels smaller than ever. His head hangs low, and he looks like he is about to collapse from exhaustion. All that violence must have taken a massive toll on his body and mind. Our girl watches him closely and notices how his breathing is heavy and uneven. She's trying to find any trace of the boy she used to know in those empty eyes. Fresh blood drips onto the floor and creates a small, dark puddle between them. He is seriously hurt, and he is not even trying to hide it anymore. Ki-yoon sees his battered arm and feels a surge of guilt. She knows she's the one who left him behind, and she's terrified of how he might react to her now that she's back. Ju Won-hyuk is clearly in a state of total confusion and losing his grip on reality. He does not even seem to know where he is or what day it is anymore. A memory of them walking home from school with their backpacks flashes through her mind. They were so happy and normal back then, and now everything is ruined. Ki-yoon approaches him with extreme caution while her mind flashes back to their school days. She desperately needs to bridge the gap between them without triggering his survival instincts. She slowly steps toward him, trying her best not to trigger his survival instincts. She has to get close enough to help him without making him think she is another enemy. Our girl finally makes her move and grabs his arm, but she immediately gasps at what she finds. He is bleeding out from a horrific wound that looks way deeper than she expected. Ki-yoon stares at the massive gash on his arm and realizes he is losing a dangerous amount of blood. She tries to talk to him, but he seems completely lost in a daze of pain. His face is a mask of pain, and he looks like he is staring through her instead of at her. The injury on his arm is deep and jagged, and it needs immediate attention. The blood has soaked through his clothes and is starting to mat against his skin. It is a gruesome sight that would make anyone else turn away in horror. Lee Ki-yoon keeps her voice calm and steady, even though she is screaming on the inside. She has to be the strong one right now if they are both going to survive. She wonders if she is being too obvious about her concern, and if that will make him pull away. She's walking on eggshells around a person who could snap at any second. She thinks back to her own happy smile from a simpler time when they did not have any secrets. That girl seems like a total stranger to the one standing in this bloody bunker. The cut on his arm looks even worse up close, and it is starting to look infected. He must have been hiding this for a long time while he was out there. A fresh trail of blood runs down his forearm and drips off his fingertips. He is losing way too much, and time is rapidly running out for our boy. Ki-yoon tells him that he needs to wash up and take care of those wounds immediately. She is trying to appeal to whatever logic he has left in his head. She points him toward the bathroom and urges him to go wash up, desperate to get him out of her sight for even just a few minutes. He reaches out with a blood-stained hand and nearly touches her face, causing Ki-yoon to freeze in total shock. Just as things get intense, he stops himself and pulls back at the very last second. Won-hyuk finally gives in to her urging and heads toward the bathroom to clean his wounds. He moves with a heavy, trembling hand as he reaches for the door to isolate himself. The heavy metal door creaks open and reveals the dark and cramped bathroom inside. This is her chance to get some space and figure out a plan. He looks back one last time and warns her again that it is raining outside and she must stay put. Even in his delirium, he is still obsessed with her safety. He disappears behind the door after giving her one final warning to stay inside where it is dry. Ki-yoon is left standing there completely stunned by how quickly the atmosphere just changed. Our girl is left standing there completely confused by how easily he just gave in. She wonders why he went along with it so quickly when he was just acting like a jailer. Lee Ki-yoon looks up at the ceiling hatch and the heavy wheel lock that leads to the surface. She is stuck down here with a mystery that keeps getting darker by the second. Now that he is busy washing up, Ki-yoon realizes this is her golden opportunity to escape. She decides to find her phone and get out of this underground bunker before he comes back out. She moves as quietly as a mouse toward the stairs, desperate not to make a single sound. Her hand grips the cold metal as she prepares to climb her way back to freedom. She is suddenly overcome by a memory of her life at school, realizing how much she misses the girl she used to be before all this madness started. He finally collapses onto his bed, looking completely broken after pushing his body way past its absolute limit. While she deals with her own mess, he is totally zonked out on the floor, too exhausted to even crawl into bed after the hell he just went through. Ki-yoon is back in that creepy industrial spot, frantically hunting for her missing phone. She's barefoot and vulnerable, which is the last way you want to be when searching a dark basement for your only lifeline. She freezes up instantly when a sudden noise echoes through the empty room. Her eyes go wide as she realizes something is definitely off about the cabinets behind her. A strange rattling sound starts coming from one of the rusty lockers nearby. It sounds like something is trapped inside and is finally starting to stir. She slowly turns toward the noise, frozen by a sense of dread as she waits to see what happens next. Hearing that name suddenly cuts through the silence like a knife, and she realizes she isn't nearly as alone as she thought. She can't process how anyone in this building could possibly know that name, and her mind immediately starts racing through every potential trap. The suspense reaches a breaking point as she waits for the person hidden inside the locker to finally reveal themselves. She is paralyzed with terror, realizing she is completely cornered and her secrets are about to come crashing down. The locker remains shut for now, but the heavy silence feels even more threatening than the noise from before. Ki-yoon is stuck in a terrifying standoff with an unknown person who clearly knows way too much about her past. He grips the edge of the sink with a bruised hand, trying to steady himself and wash away the evidence of the brutal struggle he just survived. He stares down at the water. Looking completely drained and covered in fresh injuries, he is determined to hide from the rest of the world. Meanwhile, Ki-yoon makes her way down a quiet residential street on her way home. The air feels heavy, and she cannot shake the feeling that she is about to stumble upon something she was not meant to see. She notices some small stones skipping across the ground and stops to think about her friend. She worries if he is still feeling sick, or if there is a much deeper reason for his strange behavior lately. A tiny pebble bounces right off a familiar-looking slipper tucked away in the shadows. Someone is crouching nearby, and they just realized they are no longer alone in the alleyway. The boy is caught red-handed while trying to clean up near a gate. He looks absolutely startled to see Ki-yoon standing right there, realizing his secret hiding spot has been compromised. As soon as their eyes meet, he panics and jumps to his feet in a heartbeat. Without saying a single word, he turns around and sprints away, slamming the heavy gate shut with a loud thud that leaves Ki-yoon totally stunned. She stands there in disbelief, questioning why he would suddenly run away from her like that. It reminds her of the last time he disappeared so abruptly, making her wonder what he is so afraid of her finding out. She gazes down the empty street, feeling a deep sense of worry for her friend. This constant cycle of him running away is starting to weigh on her, and she knows she cannot just let this go. Safely behind the gate, he hides his face behind his arm and tries to keep his presence hidden. He is clearly struggling to keep his composure, terrified that Ki-yoon might actually see the state he is in. Ki-yoon decides to take matters into her own hands and starts rummaging through her backpack for a solution. She realizes that her high-quality eraser is exactly what they need to fix the situation. She pulls out the small block of rubber and prepares to share it with her new acquaintance. This simple tool is about to become the bridge between two lonely souls. Ki-yoon reaches over the gate to offer the eraser to the boy, who looks completely stunned by her gesture. He has probably never had someone treat him with such casual kindness before. The boy stares at her with wide eyes, clearly unable to find the words to respond. He seems mesmerized by the fact that she is actually reaching out to him through the bars. Ki-yoon tells him to just return the eraser at school the next day and waves a friendly goodbye. She walks away with a smile, leaving him with a way to clean up the graffiti. Both of them start to head home as the encounter comes to an end for the evening. The sound of their footsteps echoes in the quiet alley as they process what just happened. Once he thinks the coast is clear, the boy cautiously reaches up toward the ledge where she left the gift. He is hesitant, but desperately wants to hold onto that piece of her kindness. His arm stretches upward as he tries to locate the small object she left behind. Every movement is careful because he doesn't want to break the spell of this moment. He finally manages to grab the eraser and pulls it down to take a closer look. This tiny item represents the first time someone has truly acknowledged his presence in a positive way. This moment changes everything because the boy starts following her around like a dedicated shadow from then on. Their bond is officially forged, and he refuses to leave her side ever again. Ki-yoon and her new friend start spending all their time together in her favorite secret spot. This staircase used to be her lonely sanctuary, but now it belongs to both of them. They bond over shared moments while the world passes them by. It feels like the start of a beautiful friendship where she finally isn't alone anymore. Unfortunately, this peaceful slice of life comes to a screeching halt. Darker days are ahead, as their happiness suddenly shatters into pieces. Violence shatters their peaceful world as things take a dark and bloody turn. A battered hand reaches out while they struggle through a situation that has spiraled out of control. They desperately cling to the railing with bloodied fingers while trying to escape the danger. Every movement becomes a painful reminder of how quickly their lives changed. The attacker finally flees into the night, leaving them both alone in the grim silence. Ki-yoon can only stare at her friend's back as the weight of what just happened begins to sink in. Her friend is barely recognizable after taking such a brutal beating to the face. The traumatic encounter has clearly sucked the life right out of him, leaving him looking like a hollow shell of his former self. Adrenaline finally gives way to pure terror as Ki-yoon begins to shake uncontrollably. She's completely traumatized by the violence, her body trembling as she realizes they barely made it out of that situation alive. Won-hyuk grips the edge of the sink, his knuckles white as he tries to keep his composure in this high-pressure moment. Ki-yoon is crouching low, looking completely terrified by everything that just went down. He leans in close enough for her to feel his breath, sweat dripping down his face as the tension between them reaches a breaking point. Suddenly, Ki-yoon loses her footing on the slick metal steps, and her hand slips right off the rail. He reacts in a split second, reaching out to catch her before she can tumble down the flight. He catches her just in time and warns her about how dangerous these stairs really are. Ki-yoon is left totally speechless and shaken by how close she came to a nasty fall into the dark. Our girl is absolutely frozen in his arms, staring up at him with wide, tear-filled eyes. Won-hyuk looks down at her with a heavy, serious gaze that makes the air feel thick and suffocating. Ki-yoon is gasping for breath, her heart hammering against her ribs as she tries to process the close call. She realizes just how close they are, and the silence in this bunker is starting to get deafening. He finally pulls away, turning his back to her like nothing even happened. She stays huddled on the steps, watching him with a mix of fear and total confusion. He lingers for a moment, looking back at her with a cold indifference that leaves her even more confused than before. He heads toward the back of the room, leaving Ki-yoon alone with her racing thoughts. She lets out a shaky breath of relief the moment he is out of sight. She looks down toward the floor and notices a small, dark object wedged between the stairs. She spots her phone wedged deep between the concrete steps after the chaotic tumble. This might be her only lifeline if she can actually manage to reach it in time. She finds her phone lying right there on the dirty concrete floor, proving her suspicions were right. Won-hyuk snaps her out of it, demanding to know why she is just sitting there instead of coming down. She begins to panic as she remembers Won-hyuk specifically told her he threw her phone into the water. She follows him down the stairs while trying her best to hide her shock. He reaches for the bathroom door, completely unaware that she just found the evidence of his lie. He stops in his tracks and mentions that there is something he should tell her. He looks back and casually warns her that the exit above the stairs probably won't open at all. He tells her not to bother wasting her energy trying to escape that way. He shuts himself inside the bathroom, leaving her standing alone in the middle of the room. She realizes that he knows every single corner of this place, which makes him even more dangerous than she thought. She flashes back to earlier, when he strictly commanded her not to go outside. A chilling thought hits her that he might have known this place would lock and trap her here on purpose. Looking back at his cold expression and behavior, she wonders if this entire nightmare was a setup from the start. She spots her phone lying on the floor below and realizes it is her only lifeline. She swallows hard, trying to keep her fear from completely taking over her mind. She finally works up the courage to reach down and grab her phone from the floor. Meanwhile, inside the bathroom, Won-hyuk turns on the tap and lets the water run over his hands. The water turns a murky red as he washes away the blood from his recent fight. He stands alone in the grim silence of the bathroom, his broken posture reflecting the heavy weight on his shoulders. He stares into the mirror, his dark eyes looking completely vacant and hollow. He dips his hand into the water and starts scrubbing away the bloodstains with a grim focus. He is methodical about it, making sure every trace of the violence is wiped away. Ki-yoon finally turns on her phone, but her heart sinks the moment the screen lights up. The battery is nearly dead, and she does not have a single bar of signal in this concrete tomb. The situation goes from bad to worse when she realizes the road outside is completely blocked off. With 0 bars on her phone and no one around for miles, Ki-yoon starts panicking about how she will ever escape this place. His cold command to head deeper into the facility echoes in her head like a haunting warning. She begins to suspect that following his orders might just be walking straight into a death trap. Standing in the middle of the decaying hallway, she finally faces the terrifying reality of being buried alive in this concrete tomb. The weight of the entire bunker feels like it is pressing down on her as her hope for a quick rescue vanishes. She looks up at the ceiling, wondering if she is really going to be trapped in this bunker forever. The reality of her situation is finally starting to set in, and it is terrifying. She wonders if he is just waiting in there, checking to see if she is still obediently waiting. She is jumpy and alert, listening for any sign of movement from behind that bathroom door. Won-hyuk stares at the evidence of his crime, realizing there is no turning back from what he has done. He pulls out a sharp folding knife and holds the blade under the streaming water. He watches as the blood gets rinsed away into the drain. He inspects the blade under the light, making sure he hasn't left even the tiniest trace of blood behind. He is incredibly careful as he finishes cleaning the knife, making sure not to leave a single spot. He can't stop thinking about the moment he finished the job, his hand trembling as it was soaked in fresh blood. He doesn't feel a shred of guilt as he looks at his own blood-splattered face in the mirror. With a sharp click, he folds the blade back into the handle and gets ready to move. He slides the knife into his pocket, hiding the weapon away before he steps back out. He stares at his reflection and steels himself, knowing he has to act perfectly normal to fool her. Ki-yoon hears the door handle turn, and her heart nearly leaps out of her chest. She panics and rushes back toward the safety of the stairs as fast as she can. Won-hyuk calls out from the bathroom, telling her to bring him a towel from the storage room. She is caught off guard and shouts back that she will bring it right away. She grips the railing, her hands shaking as she tries to figure out her next move. Desperation finally kicks in as Ki-yoon bolts toward the overhead hatch to find any way out of this nightmare. She has to move fast before that mysterious guy catches up to her and makes her situation even more dangerous. She reaches for the heavy metal valve on the ceiling hatch, praying it will actually turn. She looks up with desperate eyes, hoping for any kind of miracle to get her out of here. Ki-yoon reaches the top of the stairs and tries to force the hatch open, but the heavy circular valve refuses to budge. She strains and pulls with everything she has, but the rusted metal doesn't even budge. It feels like the entire bunker is designed to keep her locked inside. She refuses to give up, gritting her teeth and trying one more time to force the hatch open. The valve is stuck solid, and she begins to fear that it really is broken because the bunker is so old. She asks herself why all of this has to happen to her right at this moment. Suddenly, she hears him approaching from behind, and she freezes, her breath catching in her throat. She is terrified to turn around and see him. She slowly turns her head, her eyes wide with shock at the sight of him. She hears the steady drip of water hitting the floor as the man stands perfectly, still just a few feet away. He is still completely shirtless, and his presence alone is enough to make the room feel tiny. The scars and bruises on his body tell a story she isn't sure she wants to know. Ki-yoon is totally flustered, her face heating up as she stares down at him from the ladder. She looks down to find him staring right back at her, making her realize she is completely trapped on the ladder. She's completely caught off guard by the fact that he's just walking around half naked, making her wonder why he's choosing now of all times to be so casual about his body. It's hard to reconcile this brazen behavior with the guy she used to know, and she starts to feel like the stress of being trapped here has turned him into a total stranger. He reaches up toward the hatch, and for a second, she thinks he is reaching for her instead. Won-hyuk leans his body right against hers and reaches up to grab the valve himself. He is so close she can feel his heat, and he effortlessly starts to turn the rusted metal that she couldn't even budge. A drop of blood hits the floor, and for a split second Ki-yoon is hit with a memory. She remembers seeing him as a little boy, standing alone in a dark alley, looking completely broken. Back in high school, Ki-yoon watches him in the quiet infirmary, wondering what he's thinking behind those eyes. She tells him okay, and tries to keep her cool while they sit in the heavy silence. He remains silent as he focuses on wrapping a bandage around his own bloodied arm. Ki-yoon quickly starts digging through the metal cart to help find the supplies he needs. Ki-yoon tries to shift her weight on the exam table, but she ends up being clumsy as usual. She lets out a small gasp when he suddenly reacts to her movement with intense focus. Before she can even blink, he reaches out and firmly grabs her ankle to keep her still. He points out a sharp glass shard stuck right in the bottom of her bare foot. Ki-yoon tells him he really scared her and asks when that even got stuck in her foot. He tells her to stay still, or it will bleed more. Then he carefully pulls the glass out. Ki-yoon watches him, intently feeling a weird mix of gratitude and fear of his strange intensity. The tension in the room is thick as she waits for him to finish the job. He presses a bandage over the wound with a touch that is surprisingly gentle and steady. She starts to panic as she realizes just how small the distance between them has become. She finds herself unable to move, completely trapped by the weight of the moment. He stares back with a hollow look that hints at the darkness he has been keeping inside. The tension finally becomes too much, forcing her to pull away before things go any further. Ki-yoon finally breaks the silence and decides it is time to make a run for it. She tells him she is heading back to her room to escape the overwhelming tension of the infirmary. She rushes out of the room, leaving him sitting there in the dim light of the infirmary. As she leaves, her foot slips slightly in her slipper, but she keeps moving forward without looking back. He stares down at his mangled hands, the physical proof of the violent outburst he just had. She wakes up back in the present, shivering on a cold sofa in the middle of their underground hideout. She lies there in the dark, the weight of her current situation pressing down on her more than ever. Ki-yoon shifts around on the couch, her mind racing with all the questions she wants to ask. She quickly checks behind her, terrified that he might have moved while she was lost in thought. She remembers how he bandaged her foot back then, and how his hands felt on her skin. Even after all these years, that memory of him helping her is still burned into her mind. She nearly jumps out of her skin when she realizes he is standing right there, looming over her in the silence. Looking at him now, she can't help but wonder if any part of the sweet boy she once knew is still left inside this cold version of him. His eyes snap open, suddenly catching her staring and making her heart race with immediate panic. They lie there in a heavy silence that feels way too familiar for either of them. Won-hyuk just looks at her with that cold gaze that she can never quite figure out. Ki-yoon reaches out her hand, as if she wants to bridge the gap between them, but stops. He suddenly reaches out and firmly grasps her hand, breaking the tension with a touch she didn't see coming. She pulls back, immediately realizing that getting too close might be a very big mistake. He looks at her with a trace of something soft in his eyes and tells her she hasn't changed one bit since they were kids. She sees a flash of that little boy from the alley again before he turns his head away. Ki-yoon peeks through the crack of the door, her eyes wide with suspicion and genuine fear. She follows him through the bunker, her backpack feeling like a heavy weight on her shoulders today. She realizes he really did lock her in here on purpose, and she feels completely betrayed. Ki-yoon looks up at the hatch, realizing her only way out is blocked by this stranger. She finds him in the bathroom shirtless, with a towel on his head, looking totally casual. She is absolutely stunned to find him like this, and can't wrap her head around the situation. The shock hits her hard as she tries to reconcile this version of Ju Won-hyuk with her memories. She mumbles the name, Ju Won-hyuk, like she is trying to reconcile this man with her past. He casually mentions he has been coming to this bunker for years, as he focuses on getting himself cleaned up. She realizes that if he has been using this place for years, he must have been stuck behind that hatch many times before. She swallows hard, feeling a lump of anxiety forming in her throat as she watches him. They start walking down a long concrete hallway that seems to stretch into the dark abyss. The bunker is way larger than she ever expected, and every turn makes her feel more lost. Ki-yoon tells herself that approaching him like old times is her best chance to escape. She watches him from the side, wondering what he's planning to do with her in this place. They stop in front of a heavy door, and Ki-yoon notices it looks different from the others. Won-hyuk tells her that door is locked, and she should just give up on trying it. She carefully avoids the broken glass on the floor, while asking him why this specific room is kept locked. He reaches out and flips a switch, making a loud click that echoes through the empty corridor. The door swings open, and Ki-yoon stares in disbelief at the secret room hidden behind it. They find a hidden infirmary, stocked with clean medical supplies that look ready for immediate use. Won-hyuk goes straight to a metal cart and starts rummaging through the drawers for something specific. He finally peels back his sleeve, exposing a gruesome injury he's been trying to hide. She realizes this is her chance to figure out how to open the main bunker door. Ki-yoon sits down on the edge of the exam bed, watching him struggle with the bandage. Ki-yoon fidgets nervously, her anxiety growing as she sits right next to the man who holds all the answers. Won-hyuk tries to wrap his arm with one hand, but he is clearly having a hard time. He looks down at his injury with an expression that is both tired and strangely distant. Ki-yoon decides she should pretend to be worried so she can get even closer to him. She edges even closer to him, keeping her eyes fixed on the wound to make her act look as convincing as possible. He pulls the bandage tight over the injury, but the silence in the room is becoming heavier with every passing second. Ki-yoon notices that her presence is actually making him feel a little bit uneasy and tense. Realizing she's hit a nerve, Ki-yoon desperately tries to change the subject by offering to help with his bandage. Joo-hyuk is trapped in a memory that hits him like a freight train. Everything around him turns into this suffocating, dark void that he can't escape. A woman grips his shoulders and tells him he looks exactly like his father. She demands he start acting like him too, her touch feeling like a heavy curse. The memory cuts deep, leaving him breathless and trapped in the pains of the past. Ki-yoon rubs her eyes as she slowly drifts back to reality on the couch. She looks around the dim room, but something feels immediately off about the silence. Her heart sinks when she realizes our boy Joo-hyuk is nowhere to be found. She searches every corner of the basement, wondering where he could have vanished so suddenly. She tries to force the heavy hatch wheel open, but it doesn't budge an inch. Her hands reach for a heavy wheel on the ceiling, testing the lock on the hatch. Ki-yoon tentatively calls out for Joo-hyuk as she ventures deeper into the facility. She calls out Joo-hyuk's name, but only the heavy silence of the room answers back. She frantically sprints through the building and checks every storage area, but her calls are met with nothing but silence. She pushes through another door, hoping to find a way out or at least a sign of him. She steps into the old school health room, finding the place completely deserted and falling apart. This place is massive, and every step she takes feels like she is getting more lost. She wanders down a dark hallway lined with rusted pipes, wondering where on earth the guy could have disappeared to. Meanwhile, Joo-hyuk is having a complete meltdown in another part of the building. He clutches his throat, feeling like he is actually choking on his own suffocating guilt. He is gasping for air, his face pale as he tries to fight off a panic attack. He reaches toward his pocket, realizing he is still carrying something that's been weighing on him. He tries to catch his breath while slumped against the storage cabinets, struggling to keep himself from spiraling. He looks down at Ki-yoon, who is still out cold on the couch nearby. He settles on the floor next to her, looking totally defeated and exhausted by everything. He drapes a blanket over her and settles onto the floor, his mind still racing from the encounter. He can't shake the phantom sensation of being strangled, instinctively reaching up to touch his own neck. His eyes drift toward the shopping bag sitting on the floor, and his curiosity finally starts to peak. But then he finds something that makes his heart skip a beat and his face flush. The heavy silence of the room only makes his thoughts louder as he stays by her side in the dark. Joo-hyuk stares at the scattered items in disbelief, wondering why she already has all her personal things packed and ready to go. He looks down at the mess on the floor as a heavy sense of suspicion begins to take over. He spots a couple of condoms right on top of everything else, making his stomach drop as the implications sink in. He looks at her sleeping peacefully, unable to shake the feeling that he doesn't actually know her at all. Meanwhile, Jaewon is fast asleep in her bunk, completely unaware of the drama unfolding elsewhere. She suddenly jolts awake, feeling the weight of the morning after a long, restless night of worrying. She immediately reaches for her glasses so she can finally start dealing with the day's problems. She stares out the window into the early morning light, her mind racing as she tries to figure out what to do next. She can't help but think back to the simpler days when she and Joo-hyuk could just hang out without all this mess. She pulls herself together and prepares to face whatever disaster is waiting for her downstairs. She starts going through the shopping bag she prepared, making sure she didn't miss anything important for her friend. Her mom walks in and tells her to take it easy on Seo-woo now that she is finally back home. Jaewon calls her out immediately, questioning why she is already packing Seo-woo's things if she only just arrived. She realizes her mom is actually eager to get her friend out of the house as soon as possible. She can't believe how cold her own mother is being about the whole situation. She eyes the shopping bag her mother left behind, sensing that something is very wrong. Her heart sinks the moment she looks inside and finds a pack of condoms hidden among the toiletries. She turns away from her desk, realizing she can't just sit here while her mother hides the truth from her. She starts to panic, worrying that her mother might be out there causing a massive scene right now. She remembers her mom handing the bag over earlier, acting helpful just to get her out of the house. She quickly pulls out her phone, desperate to get a hold of the one person who might have answers. She keeps checking her phone, the screen lighting up her face in the dark alleyway. Suddenly, she feels a presence nearby, and her heart starts to hammer against her ribs. She stands frozen in the pouring rain, staring at her screen as the silence from the other end becomes deafening. She freezes in absolute terror when she realizes she's no longer alone in the dark. Back in the safety of the basement, Ki-yoon lets out a soft moan while sleeping. Jaewon starts her morning with a hot meal, but she is so distracted by her own racing thoughts that she can't even focus on her breakfast. Her mom immediately notices her lack of energy and asks if she had a rough night, while her dad obliviously brags about sleeping like a log for the first time in ages. Even as she forces herself to take a few bites, her thoughts are clearly elsewhere. She is stuck in her own head, trying to make sense of the chaos from the night before. The tension finally hits a breaking point, and she puts her utensils down with a firm thud. She knows she can't just sit here pretending everything is fine when there is so much work to be done. The mystery deepens once she arrives at school and sees that Seo-woo's desk is completely empty. Her classmates start whispering, wondering why the usually reliable girl hasn't shown up for class. The teacher doesn't want to take any chances and decides it's time to call home to check on her. It is definitely unusual for a student to go missing without any prior notice or explanation. In a desperate move for information, the teacher calls out to Jaewon to see if she knows where Seo-woo is. The entire class turns their heads, putting Jaewon right in the hot seat. Jaewon suddenly finds herself in the hot seat, forced to answer for her cousin's disappearance while the entire class stares her down. A heavy silence falls over the classroom as everyone waits for a response that might explain the disappearance. The tension is palpable as the students realize something might actually be wrong. The gossip mill starts spinning immediately as classmates whisper about how the two girls are actually cousins. They joke about how the pair ignores each other at school and must only pretend to be family when they are behind closed doors. The teacher tries to get some info out of a student, but she plays it cool and claims she has no idea where her classmate disappeared to. She insists they don't even hang out, trying to distance herself from the drama as much as possible. Seeing she won't get any answers, the teacher ducks out to make a phone call and leaves the class to their own devices. She warns them to stay in their seats and keep studying, but we all know that is not going to happen. As soon as the door closes, the classroom turns into a total gossip den. The guys are already piecing things together and wondering why two people would vanish at the same time. One guy specifically points out how suspicious it is that Nam Seo-woo went missing on the exact same day as the other girl. They are basically doing the detective work for us, while the girl with glasses just tries to ignore them. Jae-won tries to block out the noise by staring out the window, but she can't escape the growing pressure of the secrets she is keeping. Outside, the weather takes a turn for the worse, as heavy rain starts hammering down on the school grounds. It is the perfect gloomy atmosphere for a mystery that is only getting deeper and darker. Deep inside a hidden storage room, we finally find our protagonist Lee Ki-yoon passed out on a dusty old couch. She is hidden away from all the classroom drama in this secret basement hideout. Ki-yoon slowly starts to drift back to consciousness as the dim lights flicker above her. She has clearly been out for a while and has no idea what has been happening upstairs while she was asleep. Her eyes snap open as the reality of her situation starts to sink in. She looks around the cluttered room with a dazed expression, trying to remember how she even ended up in this dump. She bolts upright in a panic, only to realize she is not actually alone in the room. A guy is just chilling at a desk nearby and casually asks if she is finally awake from her nap. Ki-yoon freaks out when she realizes her clothes are disheveled, but the mysterious guy quickly shuts her down by claiming she did it herself. Her heart is racing as she tries to process the confusing situation she just woke up in. She can barely look at him as he ignores her panic and starts digging through some storage boxes in the back. The tension in the room is thick while she tries to pull herself together and figure out her next move. Our girl keeps a close eye on him, wondering what his deal is as she nervously adjusts her uniform. She still can't shake the feeling that something is totally off about this guy's intentions. Ju Won-hyuk stays busy rummaging through the shelves, leaving Ki-yoon to question why he even left her alone in the first place. He seems totally focused on his task, but his sudden return makes her more suspicious than ever. He suddenly whips around to face her, catching her completely off guard while she was standing right behind him. The sudden movement makes her jump as they lock eyes in a momentary standoff. Instead of being threatening, he reveals that he was actually just looking for some supplies for her to use. Ki-yoon is left stunned and doesn't even know how to react to this unexpected gesture. He pulls out a brand new toothbrush and some other toiletries, insisting that she take them for herself. He is being surprisingly thoughtful, which is the last thing our girl expected from him. Ki-yoon hesitates and tries to decline the offer, telling him that she already brought her own things. She is clearly uncomfortable accepting any favors, even if it is just basic necessities for her stay. Her mind drifts back to the raggedy old belongings she's been carrying around, which only serve as a painful reminder of her past. It is clear those objects carry a lot of heavy emotional baggage she would rather forget. He sees right through her and asks if she hates using those old things because of the bad memories attached to them. Ki-yoon is completely caught off guard that he managed to read her feelings so easily. This guy actually calls her out, saying he wouldn't want to touch those old things if he were her. He basically confirms that her hesitation is totally normal given the trauma attached to them. Ki-yoon is completely frozen because she didn't expect him to be so blunt. It hits her hard that someone finally sees the pain she's been trying to hide. She notices the shopping bag and immediately worries that he might have looked inside. The tension reaches a peak as she tries to figure out how much he really knows. She tries to act casual by mentioning she knows the gift came from her aunt. It is a desperate attempt to keep her guard up, even though her secrets are being exposed. Instead of making things awkward, he hands over a brand new toothbrush wrapped up as a fresh start. This simple gesture proves he's paying way more attention to her needs than she ever imagined. He crouches down to reach her level while she stands there barefoot and completely stunned. He is making sure she has something of her own that doesn't carry any bad memories. He stays quiet and lets the moment settle between them without any pressure. It is obvious that he understands her pain on a much deeper level than anyone else. She looks down at the toothbrush and starts tearing up, overwhelmed by the first genuine act of kindness she's felt in a long time. Back at home, she ignores her mother's offer to make her favorite dinner and retreats into her own world. Her mother warns her about the heavy rain coming, but she's too focused on her own plans to really listen. She grabs the umbrella and heads out into the street, determined to find what she's looking for. She stays on high alert as she walks through the narrow alleys, making sure nobody is watching her. She keeps a steady pace past the brick walls, her mind racing with everything that's happened. Her eyes narrow behind her glasses as she senses something is off in the quiet neighborhood. She continues her journey through the dim streets, ready to face whatever is waiting for her at the end of the road. Ki-yoon sits alone in the dark bunker, feeling the weight of the silence closing in on her. She starts to spiral, wondering if Ju Won-hyuk actually abandoned her in this hole after finding a way to escape through the broken door. The fear of being left behind starts to sink in as she realizes she has no way to survive this nightmare on her own. It is agonizing to know that her old neighborhood is just a stone's throw away, yet she might as well be on another planet. She desperately misses the warmth of her family and the simple comfort of just lounging on the couch with her parents. Ki-yoon remembers how her school and house were just a short walk away. It feels like a lifetime ago when her biggest worry was just getting home on time. She watches everyone else living their normal lives while she fades into the background. It's a cruel reminder that the world keeps turning even when you are stuck in a nightmare. Physical distance does not mean anything when people treat you like a ghost. Even standing right next to them, she felt completely invisible to the society she once belonged to. Our girl is hit with a wave of depression while huddled on the dirty couch. She is reaching her breaking point, feeling like a shell of the person she used to be. The reality of her situation is terrifying because she is totally dependent on Ju Won-hyuk. If he does not show up soon, she will be rotting in this bunker for the rest of her life. Dark memories of her loneliness and the way people turn their backs on her keep dragging her down. She cannot escape the feeling that she is meant to be alone forever. Her heart skips a beat when she hears movement near the entrance. She stays low and watches the door, praying it is not someone who wants to hurt her. Water drips onto the floor as a mysterious figure steps into the shelter. The silence is broken by the sound of soaking wet shoes hitting the concrete floor. It is actually Ju Won-hyuk, and he is carrying a cardboard box full of essentials. He looks absolutely exhausted, but he actually kept his promise to return for her. Ki-yoon can barely believe her eyes and starts to call out his name. The sheer relief of seeing a familiar face almost makes her burst into tears. She's caught completely off guard when Won-hyuk suddenly shows up at the door carrying a heavy box. He takes one look at her and immediately senses that something is very wrong. She looks absolutely miserable, drenched in sweat and barely able to keep her eyes open. Realizing the urgency, he drops the box on the floor without a second thought. He rushes over to support her and places a hand on her forehead to check her temperature. Just as he feared, she's burning up with a dangerously high fever. Her body finally gives out, and she collapses right into his arms. Meanwhile, back at school, the teacher arrives for homeroom and tells the students to settle into their seats. She prepares her laptop to start the lesson, completely unaware of the crisis happening elsewhere. Our girl Ki-yoon was playing it safe, trying her best not to set off Ju Won-hyuk or do anything that might provoke him. She couldn't help but notice the way he handled himself, especially with those bandages wrapped tight around his arm. Honestly, the guy terrified her, and she felt like she was walking on eggshells every time he was near. But something wasn't adding up in her head, and the suspicion was starting to outweigh her fear. She notices the food Ju Won-hyuk brought isn't even expired yet, which makes her realize that something about their situation is definitely wrong. As she starts poking around for clues, she accidentally knocks a can over and watches it roll across the concrete floor. She stands completely still, terrified that the loud, clattering sound just alerted her captor to what she is doing. She follows after it, her sneakers hitting the cold concrete as she tries to catch it before it makes too much noise. The whole place looks like a graveyard of old furniture and forgotten junk, making her feel even more trapped. She picks up the can, her mind racing with questions she is still too scared to ask him directly. Ki-yoon feels the weight of the situation, pulling her down as she stares at the floor in silence. She is tired of being stuck in the dark, and she knows she needs to find a way to get some real answers. Her eyes land on that massive blue door, the one they call the Blue Room. She starts wondering if it is more than just a storage room, and maybe it is actually her ticket out of this nightmare. She begins to wonder if the locked room isn't just a prison, but actually a secret exit leading straight back to the outside world. She presses her ear against the door and is shocked to hear the distinct sound of running water coming from the other side. Ki-yoon strains her ears against the door until a heavy metallic clunk echoes from the other side. She listens harder, hoping for a sign of life or a way to get that door open. She reaches for the door handle, desperate to see what's hidden inside the forbidden room. Just as she's about to open it, she feels a presence looming behind her and realizes she's not alone. She nearly trips over some glass shards as she spins around, terrified to see who's been following her. Won-hyuk stands over her with a dark intensity that makes her blood run cold. Before she can even let out a scream, he lunges forward to shut her up. He pins her down and muffles her voice, clearly desperate to keep her from making any noise. He holds her with a trembling grip, looking like he's barely holding his own emotions together. He looks absolutely exhausted, his face showing a level of pain she didn't expect to see. Seeing how vulnerable he is, Ki-yoon realizes he isn't a threat anymore and decides to speak up. She gathers her strength and asks him why he really trapped her in the building that day. He doesn't answer immediately, struggling to find the words to explain himself. He finally reaches his limit and slumps over, completely drained of energy. He tells her the whole thing was an accident, and she shouldn't overthink why he acted the way he did. Ki-yoon isn't buying it, but she knows better than to push him too hard when he is in this state. She recalls how intimidating he looked earlier, his cold and distant presence making her feel more like a prisoner than a guest. Ki-yoon tries to maintain her composure, but her suspicion is clearly visible as she waits for him to explain himself. She begins to regret her persistence, sensing that the atmosphere in the room is turning increasingly dangerous. Every small movement he makes feels like a threat, and she realizes just how trapped she really is. Won-hyuk offers no immediate answer, only a cold stare that makes her want to take back everything she just said. He suddenly stands up, and she flinches, thinking she finally crossed the line with her questioning. She worries he is getting angry, because she is starting to corner him with logic he can't explain away. A wave of regret hits her, as she realizes she should have kept her mouth shut instead of poking at his secrets. He looks down at her with a chilling indifference, as if he is deciding exactly what to do with her next. Her anxiety hits a peak as she waits for a reaction, her heart racing in the heavy silence. She recoils in fear when he shifts his weight, her body reacting to the tension before her mind can even process it. He maintains eye contact for an uncomfortably long time, letting the silence serve as his primary defense. He looks her dead in the eye and claims he never even went outside the bunker. She is completely stunned by the blatant lie, unable to believe he would deny something she knows is true. Won-hyuk demands to know where she went while he wasn't looking. He offers her some food and tells her to eat if she is hungry. She looks over the stash of canned goods he has stored away. She realizes she needs to find an opportunity to investigate the kitchen. Someone is walking nearby outside, their presence hidden by the overgrown grass. A mysterious shadow looms over the heavy metal hatch leading into the hideout. While drying her hair, she is suddenly startled by a faint creaking sound coming from the entrance. She walks into the room to find him sitting there silently, watching her every move. She notices him leaning against the wall and wonders if he has finally drifted off to sleep. Seeing him unresponsive, she tries to sneak past him as quietly as possible. She moves cautiously, her heart racing as she inches closer to the exit. He suddenly reacts, catching her off guard just as she was trying to get away. She looks down at him and realizes he has fallen asleep in a completely awkward and painful-looking position. She stares at him, trying to decide if she should take this risk or stay put. She spots the box of supplies and realizes this is her best opportunity to act while he is incapacitated. Ki-yoon is oblivious to his nightmare as she continues her quiet search through the junk. Won-hyuk stays behind, sinking into a dark hole of guilt as the weight of his lies begins to overwhelm him. He looks completely broken, struggling to maintain his composure while his secrets eat him alive. He tries to block out the past, but the fragmented memories of what happened back then refuse to stay buried. A terrifying flash of memory crosses his mind, reminding him of just how far he has gone to survive. He remembers the brutal reality of the struggle and the exact moment he realized there was no turning back. He snaps back to the present, his body trembling as he realizes just how close he is to losing everything. His hand moves instinctively toward the weapon hidden in his pocket, showing he is ready to do the unthinkable to keep his secrets. He grips the handle tight, his internal battle reaching a breaking point as he watches her walk away. The silence of the bunker feels heavier than ever, serving as a grim reminder of their desperate situation. Across the room, Ki-yoon spots something that stops her dead in her tracks. She picks up a random can from the shelf, but the thick layer of dust immediately sets off alarm bells in her head. Her heart stops when she sees the expiration date is from decades ago, proving that the fresh food he gave her had to come from the outside world. He suddenly pulls her close and covers her mouth, forcing her to stay silent as the terrifying reality of their situation finally sinks in. Won-hyuk squeezes his eyes shut, his hand trembling against her shoulder as he struggles to keep his emotions from boiling over. It's like he's hanging on to her for dear life, afraid that if he lets go, she'll disappear into the darkness. Our boy looks completely broken, his face a mask of pure exhaustion and despair as he leans his head down. He can't even look her in the eye right now, the guilt and fear finally catching up to him in this silent bunker. He explains that that person actually came looking for him, a revelation that sends a chill down Ki-yoon's spine. They are standing in the middle of the bunker, the stairs behind them feeling like a far-away escape route. She tells him that she had to run away just to get inside this place, her voice barely a whisper in the cold air. Won-hyuk just listens with his head bowed, the atmosphere between them growing more suffocating by the second. Ki-yoon looks at him with a mix of confusion and pity, wondering just how long he has been carrying this burden alone. She's starting to see a side of him that scares her more than the world outside ever could. He asks her if she really thinks his father could still be alive out there, somewhere, in the ruins of the city. The question hangs in the air, heavy with a hope that feels more like a curse than a blessing. He can only manage a weak confirmation as he slumps onto the floor, looking like a man who has lost every ounce of strength he had left. She watches him, her heart aching as she realizes just how much trauma is packed into this one person. She's trying to stay strong, but the cracks are starting to show in her own resolve as well. Ki-yoon starts to wonder if staying here in the bunker with Ju Won-hyuk was ever the right thing to do. She grips the metal railing, her knuckles turning white as she contemplates her next move. Desperate for some kind of answer, she reaches up and tries to turn the heavy wheel on the ceiling hatch. She grunts with the effort, her face strained as she prays that the mechanism isn't rusted shut forever. As the hatch creaks open just a sliver, a flash of deep red light spills into the room like a warning sign. Something is wrong, and every instinct in her body is telling her to stop before it's too late. She catches a glimpse of something moving in the shadows above, a dark shape that definitely doesn't look human. The air coming from the outside smells like rot and old blood, making her stomach churn in protest. Through the small gap, she sees a terrifying, grinning face with rows of sharp teeth staring straight back at her. The monster looks like a nightmare come to life, its eyes wide with a hunger that targets her directly. Ki-yoon gasps and falls back down the stairs, her breath hitching as she tries to process the horror she just saw. She collapses onto the floor, her hands covering her face as she tries to block out the image of that thing. She's absolutely terrified, her mind racing as she realizes that they are trapped between a monster outside and a ticking time bomb inside. This is way too much for our girl to handle all at once. She cries out in pure terror, the sound echoing off the cold concrete walls and making the bunker feel even smaller. She's losing it, the reality of their situation finally breaking her spirit. Ki-yoon is totally breaking down after her scream echoes through the concrete walls of the bunker. He gently holds her to stop the shaking, but the trauma of this place is clearly starting to win. She's shaking like a leaf, her hands gripped tight against her hair as she sobs into his chest. He holds her steady, acting as the only anchor she has left in this chaotic, crumbling world. He looks down at her with an expression that is hard to read, a mix of intense concern and something much more possessive. He's not going to let anything happen to her, but his protection is starting to feel like a cage. Ki-yoon looks up at him with tear-filled eyes, her face pale as she tries to find some kind of comfort in his gaze. She asks him the one question that has been burning in her mind since she fell. She needs to know if there is another exit, any other way to get out of this hole without facing that thing at the hatch. Her voice is trembling, her desperation palpable as she clings to him for any sign of hope. He starts prying at the heavy metal hatch, desperate to see what's hidden beneath the surface of this abandoned lot. We jump back in time to when Won-hyuk first arrived at the bunker, casually mentioning to his friend that he's run away from home. His friend can't help but wonder if Won-hyuk has finally lost it, especially after that head injury he suffered a while back. He looks at Won-hyuk with genuine concern, asking if his head is actually okay now or if he's just acting out. Won-hyuk brushes off the question with a simple realization, his focus remaining entirely on the task at hand. While they sit on the grassy hill, Won-hyuk asks a chilling question about whether certain people still live in the neighborhood. The friend is caught off guard by the strange question, his confusion growing as he tries to figure out who Won-hyuk is even talking about. Despite the weird vibes, the friend just goes along with it, having no idea that this curiosity is the start of something much more dangerous. A heavy, chilling silence fills the air as the weight of the situation begins to sink in. Ki-yoon finds herself pinned down and silenced, her mind screaming while her body stays frozen in terror. This moment of pure helplessness leaves her unable to even react while everyone around her struggles to understand the danger. She can barely breathe as she realizes the person pinning her down is none other than Won-hyuk. Looking into his eyes, she realizes with a jolt of horror that he has no intention of ever letting her leave this place. He looms over her with a frantic, sweating face, his desperation turning into a violent need to control her. Suddenly, a heavy clunk echoes through the room as someone or something tries to force open the hatch from above. He clenches his hand around her jaw, his fingers digging into her skin as he tries to force her into submission. He begs her to stay, his voice cracking with a desperate plea that sounds more like a threat than a request. In a flash of pure violence, blood splatters across the room as the tension finally snaps and someone gets hurt. He stares her down with a terrifying intensity, his eyes searching hers for compliance she simply can't give. He grips her face even harder, his fingers digging into her skin as he demands that she stop trying to run away. Ki-yoon can feel the tears starting to fall, her spirit finally starting to break under his suffocating weight. She tries to wrench herself away in a panic, but his movements are too fast and his grip is far too strong. She freezes when she sees the fresh blood on his hand, realizing that the situation has turned even more grisly than she imagined. Won-hyuk looks down at his hand, his eyes wide with shock as he realizes that he has actually hurt her. He seems momentarily stunned, his grip loosening just enough for her to finally catch her breath. He whispers a desperate plea for her to forgive him, but the damage is already done and the trust is completely shattered. Ki-yoon looks at him with pure horror, her lip bleeding and her heart cold as ice. He tries to talk his way out of the mess he caused, but the look in his eyes proves he's already gone off the deep end. The trust is officially dead, and now he's just a haunted shadow of the person he used to be. He stares at her with a wild, haunted look in his eyes, his face covered in shadows that make him look like a ghost. He knows he messed up, but his instinct is still to hold on even tighter instead of letting go. She thinks back to the boy she used to know, remembering a time when his presence didn't feel like a death sentence. He was the only one she trusted, the person who made her feel safe in a world that felt cold. She remembers the times he was actually kind, flashing back to moments when he protected her and made her feel safe. He used to be the one person she could rely on, the guy who would do anything just to see her smile. Ki-yoon looks at him now and sees only a monster, her mind unable to reconcile the boy she loved with the man holding her down. She's shaking uncontrollably, her whole body reacting to the threat he represents. The word scary hits him like a physical blow, forcing him to see the monster he's actually become. He freezes as he realizes that the girl he loves is now absolutely terrified of his every move. She begs him to stop being so frightening, her voice trembling as she pleads for some kind of mercy. She's completely trapped under his grip, realizing that the man she once cared for is officially gone. Even in her memories, she starts to see the cracks she ignored, realizing that his protective nature was always just a mask for his obsession. Every kind gesture from their past now feels like a step toward this basement. She looks at him with worry, remembering how she used to lean on him whenever things got tough. She had no idea that by letting him in back then, she was giving him the keys to her future prison. He pulls her closer, his touch firm and unyielding as he refuses to let her distance herself. He's determined to keep her by his side, even if he has to break her spirit to make it happen. They look like a normal couple for a split second, but the context of the room and the blood on his hands tells a much darker story. This is a nightmare disguised as a hug, and our girl knows she has to find a way out. He tries to play the part of the gentle protector again, promising that he won't be scary as long as she behaves. It's a chilling attempt to manipulate her into thinking everything can just go back to normal. Then he delivers the final blow, telling her that she can never leave this room or go outside ever again. He's officially stolen her freedom, deciding that her entire world now begins and ends with him. Ki-yoon just stares back at him with a hollow, lifeless expression, her mind finally checking out of this nightmare. She isn't even reacting to his threats anymore. She's just a ghost of the person she used to be. Seeing that dead look in her eyes shakes him to his core, and he realizes he's finally pushed her too far. He wanted her all to himself, but he never expected to end up with a girl who looks at him like he's already dead. He clings to her like a lifeline, desperately trying to convince himself that keeping her trapped is the only way to protect her. Her eyes dart around in terror as she searches for any opening to break free from his suffocating grip. A sudden clunk from the stairs catches her attention, giving her the perfect distraction to finally make her move. She kicks off and lunges for the staircase, leaving him behind as he watches her escape with a stunned expression. He can only watch in silence as she grabs the railing, realizing too late that he has lost all control over the situation. Ki-yoon stands halfway up the stairs, her silhouette sharp against the dim light of the bunker. She has reached her limit, and she is ready to risk everything just to get away from the madness in this place. He desperately pleads with her to stay, his voice cracking as the reality of his isolation finally starts to set in. She doesn't even flinch at his crying, her heart having turned to stone after everything he put her through today. She just keeps climbing, her focus entirely on the sliver of light coming from the hatch above. Our boy looks like he is going to fall apart right there on the floor, his whole world crumbling as she walks away. He has tried everything to keep her, but his methods have only pushed her further into the arms of danger. She stops near the top and looks back down at him, her voice cold as she gives him an ultimatum. She tells him that if he doesn't start talking and telling her the truth right now, she is leaving him behind forever. Won-hyuk just stares at her, his mouth hanging open in shock as he processes her words. He never thought she would be the one to hold the power in this relationship, and it is clearly destroying him to realize it. Without looking back, she charges toward the exit, choosing the uncertain light of the outside world over the darkness of his lies. The vacuum cleaner drags across the floor, drowning out the silence of the house. Our girl's mom is busy cleaning, trying to keep her mind off the growing unease. She answers the call, wondering why the teacher is reaching out to her so suddenly. She is completely blindsided when the teacher mentions that Seo Woo hasn't shown up for class yet. Her eyes drift toward Ki-youn's room, which has been eerily quiet lately. She tells the teacher that our girl is just sleeping over at a friend's house. But as she hangs up, she can't shake the feeling that something is terribly wrong. Back in the bunker, Ki-yoon jumps nearly out of her skin when someone sneaks up. It is Won-hyuk, and he wants to know exactly what she thinks she is doing. Her excuses die in her throat the moment she gets a clear look at his face. She tells him straight out that he looks absolutely terrible and asks if he is okay. He tries to brush her off by joking that this is just how his face normally looks. Ki-yoon doesn't believe him for a second and reaches up to pull his hair back. Ki-yoon isn't buying his tough guy act for even a single second. She reaches out to check his forehead, wondering if he is running a fever. He feels her fingers brush against his skin and completely freezes up, his heart pounding at the unexpected contact. She suddenly realizes how bold she is being and pulls back in a panic, stammering out a frantic apology. Before she can retreat, he reaches out and catches her firmly by the wrist to stop her from leaving. He pulls her back toward him, and the air between them suddenly feels heavy with unspoken tension. He knows deep down that he needs to get her away from this place immediately before things get even more complicated. She can see the desperation in his gaze, realizing that he is struggling with his own internal battle. Won-hyuk is fighting his own internal battle, knowing he needs to get her out of this bunker immediately. He realizes that if she starts feeling safe or lowering her guard, she might actually start hoping for a future. That kind of hope is dangerous in a place like this, and he knows it better than anyone. Meanwhile, back at home, Mom picks up a framed photo sitting on the shelf. They were once a perfectly normal family, living a life of peace and sunlight long before the tragedy struck. Back then, Ki-yoon was just a carefree child who could smile without a single worry in the world. Her father was always there to keep their spirits high, serving as the rock that held the whole family together. Mom just stands there in the quiet room, holding onto that memory for dear life. Back underground, our girl is trying to force open a panel with a screwdriver. She's in a storage room filled with old supplies, searching for anything useful. The sound of heavy footsteps on the concrete debris makes her freeze in place. She peeks through a doorway and sees Won-hyuk in a small medical station. He is struggling to wrap a bandage around a nasty wound on his forearm. The exhaustion is finally starting to take its toll as he struggles to manage the pain on his own. They decide that the best move for now is to find a secondary exit and wait. Ki-yoon stops him before he does something reckless, like smashing the door handle. He grunts as he pulls the bandage tight, trying to stop the slow bleed. Everything about their situation is still so vague and confusing to our girl. She watches him from behind, seeing the heavy burden he is clearly carrying. A dark thought flashes through her mind of a hand gripping a bloody knife. She wonders just how much this guy has been through before they met. They are stuck together in this cramped room, two lost souls in a dark hole. She walks around the corner, her mind racing with a million different questions. Won-hyuk finishes securing his bandage, his movements mechanical and cold. He stares at his bandaged arm, knowing he is reaching his breaking point, but refusing to give up yet. He suddenly goes on high alert as his instincts flare up, sensing that they are definitely not alone in this dark bunker. He's cornered in the bunker and grilled about whether the girl is still hiding out with him. He scans the room, trying to stay calm while he figures out his next move. The tension in the bunker is rising, and he knows he can't keep this secret forever. The memory of that bloody knife won't leave him alone, serving as a constant reminder of the violence he survived. Back at the school, the final bell rings and a sea of students floods out of the building. Jaewon tries to keep a low profile, hoping to disappear into the crowd before anyone notices her. But her escape is cut short when a teacher calls out her name, forcing her to stop in her tracks. Her friends offer to wait for her at the gate, but she tells them to just go on ahead without her. As she walks down the quiet hallway, she can feel the eyes on her back and the sweat starting to pool. The teacher stares her down, waiting for an explanation that Jaewon isn't ready to give. The teacher reveals she spoke to the girl's mother, who was told her daughter was just staying over at a friend's place. Jae-won grows defensive, doubling down on her story that she hasn't seen the girl since this morning. She turns to make a quick exit, but the teacher stops her with one more piece of information. The teacher brings up Won-hyuk from the class next door, asking if Jae-won knows where he went. When she finds out that Won-hyuk is also missing today, she realizes her web of lies is becoming impossible to maintain. She wanders through the school feeling completely abandoned, realizing she can't even trust her own mother anymore. The weight of the situation finally hits her, and the isolation makes her feel like she's truly on her own. She grabs a marker and starts sketching a map on the wall, hoping to make sense of these twisting corridors. She wonders if this bunker map is actually the key to their final escape. Her focus is suddenly shattered when she hears a faint, unsettling noise echoing from the darkness. She immediately pulls away and spins around, realizing that someone has been watching her this whole time. A flickering light above her hums with a buzz that sets her on edge as she waits for the watcher to reveal themselves. Suddenly, a cold hand clamps down on her wrist like a vice, stopping her from moving an inch. Ki-yoon gasps, her heart jumping into her throat as she stares at our boy who has been hiding in the shadows. He looks at her with such intensity that she freezes, unable to even think of a way to pull away. Won-hyuk looks down at her arm and mentions that it feels so thin he might accidentally snap it. She asks him to let go if he is so worried, and awkwardly tries to change the subject by asking if he is hungry. The memory shifts to a rainy day outside a building where our girl from before is walking with a guy. He thanks her for walking him back, but she is clearly in a foul mood and wants him to leave. She suddenly whips around and tosses a lighter right at his head to get him to stop talking. He rubs his head in pain and finally remembers that her name is Choi Jae-won. Jae-won stops and asks him if he is seriously not curious about anything else happening. He scratches his neck and wonders if she is asking why he moved to this neighborhood in the first place. Jae-won shuts him down immediately, questioning why she should even bother with his messy personal drama. He is clearly taken aback by her bluntness and asks if she has always been this cold-hearted to everyone around her. He brushes off her cold attitude and tells her he has something important he needs to ask. He looks her in the eye and asks if her cousin is currently hanging out with Won-hyuk. He stops her by asking if her cousin is currently staying with a guy named Ju Won-hyuk. She snaps back at him immediately, demanding to know why he's spewing such absolute garbage to her face. He remains unfazed by her outburst and continues to explain that the two of them likely ended things on the worst possible terms. He plays it cool while dropping a bombshell about how those two ended things on the worst terms possible. He suspects there is a much darker layer to their history, but he keeps his tone casual to see how she handles the news. She stands frozen in the downpour, struggling to process the absolute nonsense he is trying to feed her right now. Her mind races to connect the dots while she stares at him with a mix of shock and pure suspicion. Back in the present, Won-hyuk lies on his back with his eyes half closed, looking completely drained of life. Ki-yoon looks down at him, her concern growing as she realizes how much this isolation is affecting him. He looks like a shell of his former self, just existing in the dim light of the bunker like a ghost. Jae-won narrows her eyes through her glasses, thinking back to the warning Seung-chan gave her in the rain. He told her that, while some people believe it's really over, Won-hyuk definitely doesn't feel that way. Given his personality, the guy likely went to extreme lengths just to avoid someone he was afraid of meeting. The memory of them holding each other in the bunker flashes by, a moment of pure desperation and shared fear. He puts every ounce of his remaining strength into prying away the heavy wooden pallets blocking his path. He desperately claws at the gap in the barrier, fighting for even a small chance to escape his confinement. The struggle to keep going in this dark place is a constant battle that they are both losing slowly. Ki-yoon stares at him in complete shock, her heart sinking as she processes his cold words. He admits that he's been so overwhelmed lately that food was the absolute last thing on his mind. He tells her to just go ahead and eat without him, while she quietly agrees to leave him alone. She slowly pulls her hand away, feeling the physical and emotional distance between them grow even wider. As she walks away into the dark corridor, the silence between them becomes almost suffocating. He watches her walk away into the dark corridor, his expression unreadable and full of hidden sorrow. He remains standing there in the shadows, looking like a man who has finally given up on fighting their reality. The only sound in the bunker is the rhythm of her footsteps as she heads toward the kitchen. Meanwhile, in a nearby house, a news report blares from a television and fills the room with tension. Every step she takes feels heavier than the last as she tries to process everything he just said. Jaewon's parents sit on the couch in a heavy silence, the weight of their current situation hanging over them. Desperate for any kind of update, her mother reaches out for her phone on the table. Jaewon suddenly lunges forward and snatches the phone away before her mother can even touch it. She snaps at her parents, furious that they tried to make a call the very second she looked away. Her father finally speaks up, calling her out for secretly being relieved that Seo Woo isn't around anymore. Her father remains completely indifferent to the situation, dismissively clicking through TV channels while her mother sits in distress. Her mother is clearly terrified, noting that Ki-yoon hasn't even had her phone turned on since the day before. Jaewon fires back that she already told them Ki-yoon is at a friend's house and warns them to stop suffocating her with constant calls. Her mother looks her right in the eye and asks if she really thinks she can keep the truth hidden from her own parents. The heavy atmosphere brings back a painful memory of a funeral where the entire family was gathered in mourning. In the middle of the service, a small, desperate hand reaches out to grab hold of her mother's coat for some kind of comfort. A young Ki-yoon is shown clinging to her mother, looking absolutely devastated by the loss they suffered. Back in the present, Jaewon shouts that Ki-yoon only latched onto her because she knew her mother was the weakest person in the house. She is absolutely boiling with rage, her expression twisted by the years of hidden pain and resentment she's been carrying. Her mother can only look down in silence, visibly heartbroken by the cruelty of her daughter's words. As Jaewon prepares to storm out of the house, her mother desperately asks where she's going since it's already raining. Out on the porch, she fumbles with a lighter, her hands trembling from the adrenaline as she tries to find some calm in a cigarette. She stands by the trash bins, venting her frustration, when she suddenly hears someone walking up the stairs toward her. Before she can even get a flame, a hand reaches out and offers her a light, catching her completely off guard. She's stunned to see it's Seung-chan, who has once again appeared out of nowhere right when she's at her lowest point. He reaches out with his own lighter, trying to offer her a light in his own awkward, silent way. He realizes his own lighter is dead too, making the whole situation even more awkward. Jaewon glares at him, wondering why this punk keeps showing up at the most inconvenient times possible. He looks back at her with a blank expression, seemingly unfazed by her obvious hostility and annoyance. He just shrugs it off with a deadpan look, as if having two useless lighters is the most normal thing in the world. Jaewon stares at him like he is an idiot who is just wasting her time when she already has enough problems. A heavy, awkward silence hangs over the quiet neighborhood as neither of them knows what to say next. The bunker sits isolated behind a rusted barbed wire fence, looking cold and unwelcoming. Ki-yoon snaps awake in the middle of the bunker, her survival instincts instantly putting her on high alert. Something feels off in the quiet room, and she scans her surroundings to make sure they are still safe from any outside threats. She scans the shadows of the room, her survival instincts telling her that something is definitely wrong. She sits up and looks around the dimly lit room, her eyes searching for the source of her sudden anxiety. She is surprised to see him actually sleeping for once, but the sight doesn't bring her any peace. Looking closer, she can tell by the way he is breathing that this isn't a restful sleep at all. Ki-yoon moves closer to him, noticing that he is covered in a thick layer of cold sweat. She panics when she sees the state he is in, realizing he is trapped in a nightmare he cannot wake up from. Ki-yoon rushes over to him, her heart breaking for the pain he is clearly going through even while asleep. She frantically shakes his shoulder and begs him to wake up and come back to her. Won-hyuk gasps for breath and clutches his chest, desperately fighting to break free from the suffocating darkness of his nightmare. Outside, a heavy downpour drenches the streets as footsteps splash through the deep puddles on the ground. Won-hyuk feels completely drained as he stares off into nothingness, unable to find any peace in the darkness. He is clearly haunted by whatever he saw in that dream, unable to shake the lingering feeling of dread. The tension is thick as someone pauses at a heavy door, the sound of a nervous gulp hanging in the air. This person decides to take a chance and peek inside, since the door was left unlocked by mistake. They slowly turn the handle, and the door opens with a soft click, revealing the dim interior beyond. The dim glow of the lamp barely pushes back the shadows, making the entire office feel cold and empty. The light flickers like it is about to give out, adding to the unsettling atmosphere of the quiet space. He confronts her directly, asking if she is really just avoiding him because she is scared of what he has become. Ki-yoon just wants things to go back to how they used to be, and begs him to treat her normally. She watches him closely as a sense of unease grows, but he just starts walking away without another word. He tells her he needs to go wash up and leaves her sitting there alone with her thoughts. Ki-yoon feels completely lost and hurt as she watches him walk away without a second thought. Won-hyuk retreats to the bathroom, sinking deeper into his own dark thoughts as he stands over the sink. He catches a glimpse of his reflection, and for a second, he sees a monster staring back at him. He tries to scrub away the phantom pain of his past, but the memory of his wounds still feels as fresh as ever. The water swirls down the drain as he tries to stay grounded and keep his emotions from boiling over. Her eyes sting with exhaustion as she struggles to hold onto her sanity after the horrors she has just seen. Back in the main room, the girl with glasses is absolutely horrified by the scene she just witnessed. A sickening sound echoes through the dark, red void of his mind as the psychological pressure becomes too much. Won-hyuk realizes he can never push Seo-woo away because she was the only one who didn't turn her back on him. He can't imagine abandoning the only person who actually cared when he was all alone. He is willing to do whatever it takes to keep her close, even if their relationship leads to their mutual destruction. He refuses to let go because his devotion is quickly turning into something much darker. He suddenly pulls her into a tight hug, as if he is afraid she might disappear if he lets go. Seo-woo lets out a sharp gasp as he pulls her in closer, his grip so tight it almost hurts. She gets a sudden hit of intense déjà vu, like they have been in this exact position before in the past. She finally starts to relax and leans her head against his shoulder, finding a small bit of comfort in him. Her mind flashes back to a much darker time, when he was rougher and more aggressive with his actions. Now it feels like they are finally on the same wavelength as they hold each other in the quiet room. Won-hyuk wavers for a moment, his heart at war with itself as he wonders if he should even be this close to her. Won-hyuk finally stops hesitating and reaches out to bridge the gap between them. He pushes past his own inner turmoil because he just can't stand to see her suffering anymore. He pulls her into a tight embrace, clinging to her as if she might disappear at any second. It is clear that he needs this hug just as much as she does to find some shred of peace in the chaos. He places his hands firmly on her back, holding on for dear life as he tries to find peace. They stay like that for a long moment, neither one of them wanting to be the first to pull away. He buries his face in her neck, seeking some kind of shelter from the darkness that keeps haunting his mind. Ki-yoon is taken aback by how vulnerable he is being right now, unlike anything she has seen before. He eventually pulls back and apologizes for touching her so suddenly, looking embarrassed by his own display of emotion. She gently asks him if he was trapped in another nightmare, and what he saw that scared him so much. Ki-yoon notices he is still dripping with sweat, and looks like he just saw a ghost in his sleep. She reaches out to comfort him once more, but he instinctively pulls back and shifts his gaze away. He flinches away from her touch, like he is genuinely afraid that he might end up hurting her somehow. She catches sight of a bandage wrapped around his arm, and immediately realizes something is very wrong. The blood soaking through the thick gauze makes it clear that he's still bleeding from a fresh wound. She asks him if seeing his father yesterday is the real reason he's in this much pain. Ki-yoon admits that she hasn't seen him get a single moment of peaceful sleep since they arrived at this house. He remains silent as the weight of his trauma continues to tear him apart from the inside. The fresh blood on the floor is a grim reminder that he's been hurting himself just to cope with the stress. He slumps over on the edge of the bed, as if his entire world just collapsed. He questions why she even bothers to care about him after everything that happened. Meanwhile, the girl in glasses wanders through the heavy rain alone. She suddenly stops in her tracks as she senses someone approaching. She stares at the house, wondering if the person she's looking for is actually inside. Suddenly, a stranger in slippers walks right up to her in the downpour. A guy from school confronts her, demanding to know why she's so concerned about Won-hyuk's whereabouts. He leans in close, making it clear he isn't going to let her leave without some answers. He plays it off like a casual question, but his prying into her business is starting to cross the line. She glares at him, realizing this guy is a total piece of work for trying to corner her like this. She wonders why he would go through the trouble of coming all the way to this neighborhood just to hunt Won-hyuk down. Her heart sinks when he asks if she has already checked the house to see if he is hiding inside. She tries to keep her composure, but the suspicion in her eyes is becoming harder to hide. He stares back with an intense gaze, clearly sensing that she knows much more than she is letting on. He concludes that no one is home for now, but the tension between them is far from over. Ki-yoon arrives at the house expecting to find Nam Seo-woo, but she's puzzled to find the entire place looking completely deserted. She tries to reassure herself that her friend is probably fine, though she knows it's out of character for Seo-woo to just stay at a stranger's home. Despite her attempts to stay calm, the growing silence of the house makes her break into a nervous sweat as she fears the worst. Ki-yoon overcomes her fear and sneaks through the front gate to investigate the eerie house. She has a bad feeling that something is wrong and refuses to leave until she knows everyone is safe. She finally gathers her courage and steps into the yard, completely unaware that a mysterious man is watching her from the shadows. Water washes over a deep wound on Ju Won-hyuk's arm, as blood swirls down the drain during his frantic attempt to clean up the mess. She's sitting alone in a dim room, just lost in her own head. A guy leans over asking if it's because her father showed up yesterday. He notes she hasn't slept soundly since they arrived, and the tension is thick enough to cut. Ki-yoon is caught off guard by how much he has noticed, realizing her sleepless nights haven't been as private as she thought. The guy asks a heavy question. Is she losing sleep because he keeps showing up in her dreams? He begins digging into her psyche with heavy questions about her nightmares, his presence growing more suffocating by the second. As he calls out his name, the reality of the situation hits her like a ton of bricks, leaving her paralyzed by the dark memories he is dredging up. An empty school corridor sits bathed in an eerie light. Everything is quiet, but the atmosphere feels totally suffocating. Ju Won-hyuk is dripping with sweat and looking completely unhinged. You can tell something inside him just snapped, and he's struggling to keep it together. Lee Ki-yoon wanders through the dark calling for Ju Won-hyuk. She finds him standing alone in the shadows looking like a ghost. She approaches, slowly asking if he was looking for her. The poor girl has no idea what she is about to face in this dark hallway. A hand suddenly reaches out with blinding speed. The movement is violent and unexpected, catching her completely off guard. Out of nowhere, he lunges forward with crazy speed and grabs her before she can even blink. The intensity in his eyes is absolutely terrifying, making it clear that things are about to get really dangerous. She gasps out in shock, wondering what is going on. The look on his face is enough to make anyone run for their life. His grip is so tight, it is likely leaving bruises. He is shaking with an intensity that makes you wonder if he's even conscious of his actions. He looks like he is on the absolute edge of a total breakdown, his eyes filled with a terrifying mix of desperation and madness as he completely loses control. Blood starts dripping down his arm from a fresh wound. It seems the blackout made things way worse for his mental state. Lee Ki-yoon realizes he is actually injured and bleeding out. Her fear turns into concern as she sees the blood dripping onto the floor. Ki-yoon realizes he is actually in bad shape and switches from being scared to full-on medic mode. She tries to help him out with some bandages while they are stuck in this creepy industrial basement filled with shadows and bad vibes. They stand in the massive industrial basement as Won-hyuk looks completely defeated with his shirt hanging open. Ki-yoon tries to figure out their next move while a heavy, awkward silence hangs between them. He gives her a cold look and asks if she suddenly wants to play nice. The bitterness in his voice is straight up painful to hear. Our girl is done with the drama, and her mind is full of nothing but thoughts of leaving this nightmare behind as soon as possible. They walk down the dark corridor looking like two lost souls. The scale of the place makes them look incredibly small and vulnerable. She looks down with a grim expression on her face. The weight of the situation is finally starting to crush her spirit. Without another word, she starts walking away into the darkness. She is determined to find an exit and leave this place forever. She reaches a massive steel door and decides it is time for action. She tells him they are breaking it down because they both need to get out of there immediately. She repeats that they both need to get out now. No time remains for arguing or staring into the void any longer. Since they cannot find a key anyway, she decides smashing the door open is their only option left to escape. She looks back and tells him that if he will not help her break the door down, she will just do it herself. She has completely run out of patience for his moping and is ready to take charge. Ju Won-hyuk just stands there with his hair covering his eyes, looking completely broken and useless in this crisis. He finally looks up, but no life remains in his gaze. The dude is just drifting in his own personal version of hell. He slams the hammer into the lock with a violent crack, putting every ounce of his strength into breaking them out of this room. The lock finally gives way, and they push the door open, praying that the blinding light on the other side is their path to freedom. Instead of the outside world, they find a massive room filled with humming machinery. Huge tanks and complex pipes fill the space stretching as far as they can see. This is not the escape they wanted, and the realization is devastating for both of them. Lee Ki-yoon stands there with her mouth hanging open in total shock. Her heart just sinks because she realizes they are still trapped in this maze. She scans the machinery with her flashlight, but every new shadow just makes her realize how much deeper this maze actually goes. The reality hits hard as she realizes they just stumbled into the machine room. This is just another layer of the maze they have to survive. She looks out and realizes this is definitely not the way out. Her hope is officially fading away as the walls start closing in again. She stares at a sight that makes her brain short-circuit. This whole situation is just getting more twisted by the second for our protagonist. Her strength completely vanishes as her legs feel like lead, and she struggles to take even one more step forward. Despair finally takes over as she realizes this was all for nothing, and she begins to believe this nightmare will never end. The shock is too much for her to handle as her world starts to spin, and she feels her body beginning to fail. She reaches out blindly into the darkness, desperate for anything to catch her before she collapses into the void. Just as she starts to fall, a strong grip catches her arm and refuses to let her slip away into the dark. He pulls her in close to his chest, refusing to let her face this terrifying situation alone for another second. They both tumble to the ground together, but he makes sure to use his own body to shield her from the hard floor. He takes the full force of the impact, leaving him battered and bloodied as the dust finally begins to settle. Ki-yoon checks on the battered Nam Seo-woo while the weight of their situation finally starts to hit her. She realizes they are stuck in a total dead end with no clear plan for what comes next. Seo-woo opens up about his bleak reality, admitting that he has no one waiting for him on the outside. He spirals into the dark thought that he might just fade away and be completely forgotten by the world. Ki-yoon's anxiety reaches a breaking point as she desperately searches for a solution.